Hello, True. I hope you are well. I hope you're doing, keeping safe, keeping sane. I hope you've had a good time in your group so far. My name's Hannah, and we're going to be carrying on our series in Exodus. So we are in our week 3 of our series. So we have looked at uncertainty, we've looked at disappointment, and now we're going to be focusing on frustration, which I feel is quite a current topic in lockdown at the moment. So we're going to be in Exodus 16 this week. Now, obviously, a little bit of context is that God has delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, and at the moment in Exodus 16, they are in the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. So currently, they're in this period of waiting. So obviously, it was meant to be 40 days, but actually, they've been waiting for 40 years. It's a long time. So this is kind of what happens in the desert. Now, so I am just going to skip to my past self, reading the Exodus 16, and then we're going to carry on. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the 2nd month, they came out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat round pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted, but we have brought us into the desert to starve this entire assembly." The Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you, the people who are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, he looked towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one is to gather as much as he needs. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some gathered little. And when they measured it by the omer, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until the morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until the morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is the day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is the Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. When the Lord said to Moses, How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives the bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where he is on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was like white coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so that they see the bread I gave to you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna in front of the testimony that it might be kept. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. We're back. So in this chapter, we see the Israelites actually frustrated because they have been delivered out of Egypt and into this desert, but actually they don't have the food and the things that they kind of thought there would be there. Actually, they don't have any decent food. That's in verse 3. They were saying they would rather die at the Lord's hand than to starve. Now, a little bit dramatic if you ask me, but maybe the food was really good before they were delivered out of Egypt. But obviously they are in this period of waiting, and it can be very frustrating, much like in lockdown at the moment. Actually, we're not used to the things that are the way they are at the moment. Actually, we would much rather be in 2 years ago when things were so much more comfortable and things that we knew. This is the unknown, and this is much like what the Israelites are experiencing as well. But Moses and Aaron actually calls out to God, and God will provide for them, and God says he will provide manna every single day. Now, manna every single day, manna is a type of bread. Now in the chapter it sounds an okay type of bread, but it's probably not up to the standard of Hovis or Kingsmill or Tesco Finest bread. So it's not the bread that we're used to. Actually, it's probably not the best bread ever, but God knows that it will sustain them, and it is a bread that will sustain them, and that is why God has provided it for them, because God knows ultimately it will sustain them. So I'm going to actually go through the chapter and pick out specific verses that I feel are really key and that God kind of wants us to focus on. So the first point is in verse 8. So it says, "Moses also said, 'You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord.'" Now, it is okay to grumble. Actually, the situation that we're in at the moment, the online school, they're not being able to see all our friends, not being able to see all our family, maybe the rubbish weather, it is okay to grumble. Actually, the Israelites, they grumble too. We can relate to the Israelites because it was a grumbling, it's a frustrating season that they were in, and the frustrating season that we're in as well. But let us take heart and know that actually God sees our frustration. God sees what we're going through. He sees the grumbling. He doesn't look at this situation and think, "Oh, you guys, isn't it so fun?" Actually, he knows that maybe we are not enjoying this as much as we would like to. Actually, maybe this lockdown and the online school isn't as fun as everyone said it would be. I don't think anyone said it was fun, to be honest, but actually God still sees our grumbling and sees our frustration, and we've got to take encouragement from that to know that actually nothing doesn't go unnoticed. Actually, God still sees us, still knows us, and the Israelites didn't go unnoticed by God. Actually, we see later on in the chapter that God still provided for them and God still sustained them, and God will do the same with us as well. And if we look further down on verse 15, actually it says, "When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, 'What is it?' For they did not know what it was." Now, so they're talking about the manna. So they didn't actually know what this manna was. When they first saw it, they were like, "What is that? What is that God's provided us with?" But actually, it shows that God is still working even in the frustration and the waiting. Actually, in this period of lockdown, it can feel frustrating when we might not see God doing the things that we thought he would do. So maybe we thought that we would see a friend become a Christian. Actually, that isn't happening, or we're seeing something happen that God we thought would happen, and actually it's not. But we've got to take heart and just have faith, knowing that God is still working even in this season. And actually we can see the Israelites here, God still was doing things and still provided for them. But when God first provided for them, the Israelites were confused. They were like, "What is that?" And sometimes our frustration can get in the way of seeing what God has provided us with and what God has blessed us with. And we need to actually not let our frustration get in the way of what God has blessed us with and the provision that God has put in our lives. And can you think of now, actually, maybe in your head, or you can discuss this later in your group, actually, is there anything that God has provided you with at the moment that maybe you have kind of skipped past, or you've just you've missed because actually you've been too frustrated in this lockdown. I know I have, certainly. Actually, I've been frustrated in this. I'm in my final year of university and I haven't had a final goodbye lecture. But actually, okay, I'm going to move past my frustration and actually look that God has still blessed me with a great group of friends and a great past 4 years at university and the memories that I've made. And you've still got to focus on what God has blessed you with and the provision that God has given you in your life, because that's what the Israelites did later on. Actually, we'll read it later on and we'll see that God knows what they needed, and God knew that even when he was working, they may not have seen it because of their frustration. But later on as well, in verse 18, it says, and when they get measured it by the omer, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. And sometimes frustration, the thing with frustration is it can cause us to want things to happen in a specific way at a specific time. And I know many of you can relate to this. Maybe, okay, we've been told by the government that lockdown will finish February, whatever it was. Is that going to happen? We don't know. Actually, it's so frustrating when we want things to work out in a specific way, in a specific time. But when God provided the manna for the Israelites in this chapter, actually, even though the Israelites, some of them gathered too much, some of them gathered too little, each of them still had as much as they needed. And God will do the same for us, actually. God has provided us with exactly what we need and has equipped us for this time and such a time as this. And God knows that actually in our frustration he can still work things out, and he can still provide for us what we need. And that manna, actually, like I said earlier, it will sustain them. It's something that sustained them continuously, and it will, God knew that it would provide them and it would sustain them for a long period of time. And is there anything now that you can think of maybe that God has provided you with that kind of will sustain you? Is it the daily devotionals that you could be doing? Or is it, okay, I've got online church on a Sunday, that every single week, that is routine, and that is something that I know I can set time aside and look to God. And I think we need to just not let that frustration actually cause us to kind of miss things or want things to happen in a specific way, because God is ultimately in control. We know that will never change, and we can put our hope and our trust in that as well. And so later on, actually in the chapter further down in verse 32, it says, Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they see that the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt." And this, I feel like God wants us to focus on actually what he is doing in this season of frustration. It is a very frustrating season. Actually, you might be frustrated with online school, which, by the way, you are doing an excellent job. All of you have online school. You guys are smashing it. I don't know how you're doing it. My hats come off to you. Keep going, because you are doing great and you're so nearly there with half term, but keep going. But I feel like God wants to actually focus on what is he doing in this season at the moment. Actually, God encouraged the Israelites in this verse to keep an omer of manna, so keep an omer of the bread, and set it aside to actually show future generations of the faithfulness of how God had been faithful and the goodness that God had provided with them. And is there anything that you can think of at the moment that maybe you could write down, or you could kind of put, I don't know, in a memory jar or something, and actually keep that and just hold on to that, and know that actually God did that in this season, and 2 years down the line or 10 years down the line, you can think, okay, God did that in a season of frustration and in a season of a pandemic, and I know God will still be faithful in the season that I'm going to go into. And I think the Israelites did this, and God encouraged them to do this, and I feel like God wants to encourage us to do the same as well, and let us be encouraged by God's faithfulness and God's provision and his ability to sustain us forever. His faithfulness won't change. That is a fact, and that is the truth. And the last verse I want to focus on is verse 35, and it says, "The Israelites ate manna for 40 years. Now, that's a long time to eat manna, bread. that is a long time actually, but God knows the long-term plan. Like I said earlier, he is in control. He knows the long-term plan. He knows what's going to happen. He knows when this lockdown's going to end. He knows when online school is going to end. He knows when we can all go back together and we can be in true together in person. And it's frustrating not knowing that. I know that I get frustrated sometimes not knowing what's going to happen next week or in 2 months' time. But actually, we've got to take heart and we've got to have faith to know that God is in control and he knows the long-term plan. And if there's one thing that you're going to hold on to, and there's one thing that you can hope in, that's it. It's actually that God knows the long-term plan and he knows that he is in control. But there's 3 kind of questions that I want to leave you with this evening, just to discuss in your group. So question number 1 is, what is God providing you with at the moment? Question number 2, how can we use this time to focus on what God has blessed us with in this season? And then question number 3 is, how can we use or how can we shift our focus and our frustration onto what God is doing and what he is providing for us at the moment. So I hope you have a great discussion in your group. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope you all have an amazing rest of your weekend, whatever day it might be. But I hope you're all keeping well. Lots of love and see you soon.